just watch up above the horizon, and they're going to get really bright, and then they're going to go away. See them? There's two of them right there. Those are not airplanes.
Yeah, they keep circling.
They just keep circling, and they're going to go away.
And there's nothing on your radar right now?
No, there's nothing there. I can zoom out.
Now the light's going out.
They're gone.
Have you ever seen anything like that before?
A couple times in this area. But
we're flying over New Mexico?
Yeah.
Which is Roswell, which is where all those...
Correct. It's where all the weird stuff happens. They're going to go again.
Have you ever seen anything like this?
They've been doing it for like the past hour.
What do you think they are?
Logic would say satellites, but satellites go in a line. These are like circling.
Are they like high propulsion devices, you think?
I don't know.
Is that how an aircraft would fly?
I mean, we're at 40,000 feet. So whatever that is, has got to be at 80,000, 100,000. There's got to be way up there.
They're at 100,000 feet?
They would have to be. The X-15 flew at 300,000 feet. Here they come again. They're coming around again. You can see the one. It's going to get bright, and then it's going to go away.
So they're above us significantly.
Look, it's going to get really bright.
The video clip you just reviewed showed circular geometric shapes, spheres as more commonly known, brightly lit up in the night sky. These are certainly nothing new to any of us following the UFO-UAP phenomenon. When we take into account what we've learned recently about the Colombian Buga Sphere in that its surface is made up of fiber optics and LED lights, one would be ignorant not to come to the conclusion that the orbs, or spheres we've been seeing, are actually one and the same. It would also be just as ignorant not to address the orbs, or spheres, as we've come to know, in the disappearance video evidence of Malaysia Airlines, flight MH370. The clips you're about to review cover Ashton Forbes' extensive research into this anomaly.
So Bob Grenier, back in November of last year, he is probably one of the world's leading experts at low energy nuclear reactions, which is what cold fusion rebranded into in the 90s after it got heavily discredited by the government. As a quick side note, I want to point out something that not a lot of people know. Pons and Fleischmann in 1989 made their announcement for cold fusion. There were 60 replications of their experiment. 60. The DOE created a tribunal. The Department of Energy created a tribunal, and they went to all of these sites that were reporting positive recreation results, and they debunked them, and they made them retract their papers one at a time. It's actually unbelievable how much we suppressed cold fusion, and the world has no idea about it. And this isn't to say that Pons and Fleischmann, that their method was the only way to do cold fusion, or even that they were doing it correctly. The point being, the Department of Energy did not want us looking into this. And Bob Grenier in November, before I even met him, he did a video about the MH370 videos. And the reason why he was doing that is because he noticed that those orbs are balls of plasma consistent with cold fusion or cold plasma. It's not hot fusion. It's not the temperature of the sun. It's a much lower energy level. And he knew, because he could see the heat signature in the orb is consistent with this vortex that's being produced to create stability in this ball of plasma.
This would kind of imply that these are warmer than the environment, and for that to happen, one might expect that if they didn't have their own energy source, they must be extracting the energy from the environment. That the exotic vacuum objects will fire a thing, or it has some sort of projected field out in front of it that will cause other exotic vacuum objects to orbit around them. So there is something that goes out in front. I believe that this is the toroidal moment, the beam that goes out far faster in front of it.
To me, that's one of the hugest corroborations of the videos. How could somebody know?
By the way, that
Yeah.
you were supposed to do Joe Rogan's podcast.
Yeah.
What happened with that?
Joe Rogan let something slip. He said, I talked to my buddy Jeremy Corbell, who's this UFO disclosure guy. He's friends with George Knapp, who's a journalist, who these guys brought kind of Bob Lazar to the limelight. I've got sources and people too who tell me information. And what I heard about that situation is it wasn't Jeremy Corbell that told Joe Rogan, but that it was actually George Knapp that told him that the videos were fake and not to talk to me, which I think is really hypocritical, because these guys, I've seen the videos that they've pushed out over the years. Nothing they pushed out is even remotely as compelling as the MH370 videos. There's not a real live event. There's not 2 videos from military from 2 different angles and thermal and stuff like that. And it seemed a little bit weird to me, especially because I watched some of these guys' content and it's always about aliens. The thing is, like, I think those guys are telling the truth as they see it. Jeremy Corbell, George Knapp, and I know they know Lou Elizondo. They never talk about United States surveillance capabilities. They never talk about what the technology would mean from a weaponization perspective. And that just rubs me the wrong way, because it feels like they're being controlled about
Limited
what they
hangouts,
say.
I think, is the term that they use, where like they intentionally give you some information to kind of make you think that you're getting to information, but actually like it's not. It's kind of controlling what information you're getting to. So, and there is a lot of that. I mean, the CIA definitely does engage in that, and they do have people that go out there and you're like, this guy's blowing the lid on this, but really he's got a very controlled amount of information that they're allowed to present.
They have, in my opinion, some type of slow drip process that's went out there. I've heard Jeremy Corbell say directly that he does not think it can be our technology, that he was told from the Nimitz incident that Commander Fravor was told by the CIA that the Tic Tac is Lockheed Martin technology, private military defense contract. And I went, whoa. But he's like, no, it's not possible. It has to be aliens, essentially. And that Jeremy Corbell has said it multiple times that there's stuff they can't say because it would impact national security. And I go, wait, aren't you an independent?
This indicates that why would the background be at a different frame rate than the cursor? Well, because it's a Citrix session and they're on a computer remotely logged in to a session. Right there, see how this orb doesn't quite, right at the beginning, the orb kind of circles around the plane. This is clearly some kind of tracking and homing mechanism. It hasn't locked in on the plane, and it does one orientation, one spin on the side of the plane, and then it locks in. So go ahead and play it. So you'll see this spin, and then it locks in on the plane, and now it's revolving around the plane. And now the second and third orbs appear right away, and they are immediately locking on the plane. I think that's just an amazing detail. It tells me that whatever technology this is, we have tracking and homing and vectoring capabilities that are far beyond what the public understands right now. Because they're doing this in a 3-dimensional environment. The first orb comes in at almost hypersonic speeds, thousands of miles per hour, and then immediately slows down and matches the speed of the plane perfectly. And this speed of the plane isn't even flying at cruising speed. It's turning, we can see it turning, it's descending, and it's flying low. So these things, it's actually kind of slow, the same way where if you're in a car turning around a bank, you have to slow down. Same idea here. It's only going about 150 to 250 miles per hour on the bank. What other details do I want to point out here?
Is it when it's mapping the plane? Is it and they keep going around and around and around? Is it creating? It's creating an image of the plane, I guess. Is it almost from a spherical standpoint?
I think so, because when you people did so much analysis in these videos a year ago, it kind of blew me away, where people mapped out the orientations of the orbs. And they found if you squeeze time down, it actually is making a spherical pattern around the plane, which to me would say, yes, it must be mapping it, right? That's the logical conclusion. The day the plane disappeared, that we claimed Subang Air Traffic Control lost contact with the plane. If you extrapolate the travel of the plane, you find out around 1840, it's going to be in the Nicobar Islands, right there. And then you look at that China Times reported Mayday call. They claim that communication was intercepted at 2:43 a.m. You convert that from Malaysian time to UTC, 1843 UTC. I'm just looking at this going, we have a window of 5 minutes now, or less, in which we're watching this plane disappear on a video. So I've got a location, I've got a time of this plane within 5 minutes, and I've got 3 corroborating sources, independent corroborating sources. This is where I tell people, if there was a court case, I feel very confident, even if I'm telling people that we teleported a plane away, that I've got enough evidence that we can convict pretty much anybody, the U.S. government, of the crime.
Journalist Chris Cuomo had an interview with Ross Coulthart discussing missing aircraft, and like many of you know already, this is certainly not a new topic, but what is interesting is we now have a new suspect to investigate. One can't help but ask the question about the infamous Bermuda Triangle, historical cases of mysterious disappearances. Were any of the aircraft and boats that have never been found cases like Flight MH370? We certainly didn't at the time have any technology to investigate at the level we can today. The next clip certainly may make you wonder.
Incidents where US military, particularly US pilots, have either disappeared or crashed in strange circumstances. There are these incidents all the way through US military history. And indeed in my country, there's a case, a very famous case in 1978, I'm sure people will correct me if I'm wrong. A young pilot called Frederick Valentich was flying over Bass Strait between the island of Tasmania and the mainland of Australia. And he reported to the air traffic control at Moorabbin in Melbourne that he was being hovered over by a gigantic craft. And in the course of the conversation, all of a sudden a metallic noise was heard. The audio of that exchange is publicly available, and it's quite frightening. Something, he claimed, was hovering above his aircraft, and then he and his aircraft disappeared and were never seen again.
And the conversation between Flight Service Officer Steve Roby and Fred indicates Fred was convinced he was being buzzed by a mysterious craft.
As it's flying past, it's a long shape, cannot identify more than that it has such speed. It seems like it's stationary. What I'm doing right now is orbiting, and the thing is just orbiting on top of me.
Delta Sierra Juliet, Melbourne, can you describe the aircraft?
It's got a green light and sort of metallic like, and all shiny on the outside.
He was definitely under stress.
Delta Sierra Juliet, it's just vanished.
Frederick then said, so it had reappeared. And that strange aircraft is hovering on top of me again.
It's hovering, it's not an aircraft!
He didn't finish that communication. There was all of a sudden a clicking sound. Pulsing sort of electronic. After the clicking sound, I called him numerous times and got no response. Yeah.